So now that I have some basic controls set up, I made a real quick pass to deal with some really basic aesthetics of my project. I want to start to experiment with some gameplay, some basic mechanics for gameplay. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some simple obstacles or platforms that I have to control my sphere and move across. Now, all of these platforms won't have the same mechanic. It's kind of mixing and matching different mechanics to create a compelling level. We'll talk about level design a little bit later on, but for now I want to just get some of the basic mechanics down. I want to create 3 separate obstacle mechanics for now, and we'll make more complex versions of these later. I'm going to start off with my first cube, or maybe I'll create another cube from the ground up. I'm just going to borrow this cube. Now I'm going to duplicate and move this over, and the only reason I'm duplicating is because I'll probably want to reuse the first cube again for something else. So this cube I'm going to rename. I'm going to call this rotating platform. Okay, now the basic concept here for this, I'll just double click to zoom in. I want to create a couple of different mechanics. One, I want a platform that kind of moves up and down. I want a platform that kind of travels around. And then I want a platform that is going to rotate over time. Okay, and the idea is that it'll rotate, say, 90 degrees, it'll stop and pause, rotate another 90 degrees, stop and pause, and so on. So I'll just start building a simple basic mechanic for this rotating platform idea. Now, I'm not going to invest so much time in terms of the level design yet, because I do want to make a quick pass at the size at which I'm modeling things and the scale, and we'll start to build some basic assets in Cinema 4D and move those into our level. Now, that won't be required, but I will cover that process in really simple terms. Now, I want to create this basic rotating mechanic, and I'll do that by naming my cube rotating platform. Now, this does not necessarily have to be a rigid body. We'll talk about different reasons why we might want to use just standard objects with colliders. This rotating platform, I'm going to add a state machine to it. Now, the state machine, I'm going to go to the FSM tab, and I'm going to get in the habit of calling these state machines whatever it is that they're doing. So I'm going to call this FSM rotating. I'm going to go to the state, and what I want to happen is I want this object to rotate, and I'll choose probably the Z axis for the demo, and I want to rotate this object 90 degrees. So I'll go to rotation, I'll go to Z, and I want to rotate this 90 degrees, and I want to find an appropriate amount of time to do that. Then I want it to pause. So maybe I take like 2 or 3 seconds to rotate. It stops, it pauses for a second, and then rotates another 90 degrees. So what I'll do is I'm just going to zero out these rotations. They're going to negative 360, and I don't know why that is, but I'll just kind of zero those out. It'll be a little bit easier. The first state, I'm going to have this object rotate. So I'll just do a real simple, I'll call this rotating state. I'm going to go to the transform menu, the action menu. And what I want to do is I want to do a rotate. I'll double click. Now I want to rotate this along either Z or X. I'll do Z. I'm going to toggle this button. Whenever we see this drop down menu, that means that it's looking for a variable. And remember, if I toggle this button over to the right, that allows us to hardwire a value in. And for this mechanic, I simply want to rotate this 90 degrees. I'll rotate it along itself, and I want to do that. If I'll do this per second, and I'm actually rethinking rotating at 90 degrees. I may want this to rotate and take 2 seconds to get to 90 degrees. And so what I'll do is I'll take that value of 90 and I'll divide it by 2, which gives me 45. So I want it to rotate 45 degrees per second. So I've checked the per second. And what I'll do is I'll build a little wait function down here at the end that says wait 2 seconds, which should cause this to arrive at 90 degrees. And then we'll pass this to a different action. So I have my transform action worked out, so I'm rotating 45 degrees in the self space per second. Now I'll scroll down and, or actually I'll go up and I'll choose the time category, and inside time, I'll just double click wait. Now I want the rotate to happen before the wait, so I'll just take wait and I'll drag that down, or I'll drag rotate up, whichever you want to do. And I want it to wait 2 seconds, and then I want to fire off a finished event. Now the finished event that I'll do is I'll just go to events and I'll create a really simple event, and I'll just call this I'll call this stop. Okay, so the logic here is that we're rotating 45 degrees per second for 2 seconds, and then we want to send off the stop event. So I'll choose stop as the event. I'll right click and add stop as a transition. And now I want to send that stop event over to another state. So I'll add a state by right clicking. This will be my wait state. And I'll wire stop over here. So the logic is that it rotates for 2 seconds at a rate that we've defined here. It does that for 2 seconds and then it fires off to stop. So let me hit the play button and we'll run this. And the result is that it should rotate to 90 degrees. Now it over rotated just a little bit, and we could probably fix that by going into rotate and choosing real time. And let's try to hit play again and see if that fixes our problem. So we'll rotate, and that time it actually stopped short. So this is a kind of an imprecise way to do this, but that's okay. It'll give me kind of the general results that I want. In fact, maybe what I'll do is I'll try to rotate at 30 degrees per second, and I'll change this to 3 seconds. So in other words, every 1 second it rotates 30 degrees. So multiply 30 times 3 and we should get 90 frames, or 90 degrees, excuse me. So we'll rotate, and I see that it rotates, and I'll look up here, and so we're still off a little bit. It's rotating to 84. And we'll cover some ways to fix that, but for now I want to keep this rotation as simple as possible. So I'll turn off real time. Let's see what we get. I'll hit play, just kind of tweaking these settings just a little bit, and then we got 90. Now we're over rotating just a little bit. I don't think we'll be able to correct for that with this simple solution. Maybe if I turn let me turn per second off and see what that gives us. Oh, we definitely don't want to do that. That's spinning way too fast. That's spinning once per frame, or 30 degrees per frame. So I'm gonna turn back on 1 second. I'll wait 3 seconds and then fire off the stop event. I'm gonna go to wait, and I'll add another wait action here, and we'll have it wait maybe 1 second. I'm gonna create an event. I'm gonna call it reset. I'll go back into my state, and I'll choose reset as the action, the finished event. I'll check real time, although I might want to uncheck that in just a little bit. And I'll add reset as a transition and wire that back to rotating. So the logic here is that in the rotating action, we're causing our platform to rotate at 30 degrees per second for 3 seconds, and then we stop. It fires off the stop event. It pauses for 1 second, then rotates. So the result is that it should rotate for 3 seconds, stop for 1 second, and begin to rotate again. So we're rotating, it should stop, and then it restarts. So it's kind of a rotate, pause, rotate. And with that, we can create a real simple platform. We can kind of wire these things together. Okay, so I can duplicate this, and I'll move this forward just a little bit. And now when I hit the play button, we have 2 of these things rotating. Now I think it'd be kind of cool to have these rotating or starting to rotate at different rates or different times. And we'll continue to kind of play with that and tweak that. Now we do have a little bit of an issue here, because ultimately the idea is that we want to be able to move our character and kind of hop up on top of these things and try to move across them. So this is an obstacle that maybe we want to move across, or kind of move around or in between. In order to do that, we need to build some kind of ramp. Now, there's a couple of different ways that we could get away with building a ramp. We could, in really simple terms, just create a game object, create a cube. I'll take this cube and make it really kind of small along the y-axis. I'll do 0.1, and I'll scale it either in the z or the x, depending on which direction we want to go. And then we can just do a rotation In this case, we'll do like a 45-degree rotation, or maybe negative 45, or maybe negative 30. We can get the rotation kind of figured out. Let's try that again, negative 30. There we go. And we can keep rotating this and just kind of line this up and say, yeah, okay, there's my ramp. Okay, and you can see it's pretty imprecise, but you know, we could probably get away with something like this. It already comes with a collider, and now when I hit the play button, if I move over here, I have this very extremely narrow ramp. Okay, and I can try to get up on it, but even the controls are there we go. Oops, nope. So obviously I have a problem with my scale. There we go. I got lucky and got up on top of it, and then it kind of flips me off. So I have a basic mechanic here, but I have a real problem with my scale. As long as I'm going to keep my player character at a scale of 1, which is most appropriate, I need to really rethink the size of these things. Okay? And so I'm going to go back, I'm going to do a little sketching, do a little experimentation, and figure out what the most appropriate size is. That if we're going to build a series of platforms and ramps and different obstacles that we need to traverse for these basic mechanics, I really need to figure out what the appropriate size is. So I'll do that, and I'll come back in the next presentation. I'll probably set my size and scale to either 3 or 4, and I can experiment with that by just choosing 3 along the X, 3 along the Z in this case, or I could go to my rotating platform cube and I could bump this up to 3 in all directions. And in fact, let me take that back down along the Y. In this case, I could just do a Y of 1. I'll reposition this just for a real quick demo. There we go. And now when I hit the play button, okay, so the minute that I have 3, it's still, you know, it still feels pretty narrow. Okay, but I'm kind of getting the basic results that I want. My rotation is off because I've scaled this in slightly different ways. But you can see I got the basic width set up here. So I'm actually going to go with 4 as my basic scale for this environment to build platforms and everything else. So experiment with the rotating platform. We'll arrive at an appropriate scale. We'll continue to push this forward, talk about some other basic mechanics that we can implement and start to build these obstacles. And then we'll create a goal that we need to get to. And then based on these simple mechanics, we'll come up with the basic level design. But we'll do that in future presentations.